he decided that his holy guardian angel was, as the name of the puka in the movie was named Harvey, right? So he would just call his holy guardian angel Harvey from then on, and the reason why he said that was so as not to take the who, the identity itself, the particular, you know, identity too seriously, because for him, he could not take seriously the image of a 6 foot tall white rabbit.
Hello, and welcome to the Spirit Box, where we explore folklore, magic, the world of the spirits, and everything in between. Today, we welcome back author Gabriel Kennedy to get a deeper dive into his research to the great Robert Anton Wilson. So we get into the wild and weird territory that Wilson loved to inhabit, where Irish folklore, psychedelic exploration, and quantum physics intersect. Now, I know they seem like unlikely bedfellows, but Robert Anton Wilson certainly managed to make it happen. So Gabriel takes us into Wilson's 1975 encounter with the Celtic Púca, the part holy guardian angel, part mischievous trickster, and how this occurrence, and indeed Raw's overall love of Irish culture and Irish language, led to his fascination to develop the ideas, and quite robustly, into the Celtic roots of quantum theory. We get into William Rowan Hamilton's strange mathematics that became the essential to Schrödinger's equation, and the playful logic of Irish language, and how Finnegans Wake somehow helped name a subatomic particle. You'll be very familiar with that particle. It's quite a well-known one, but I bet you didn't realise where the name came from. In the Plus show, Gabriel and I dig into Wilson's spontaneous remote viewing experience that took place the exact same day the CIA's Project Stargate psychics were in action. We also explore his magical practices, the Sirius connection, and his puckish dismantling of conspiracy culture. It's a conversation that moves between myth, mathematics, with plenty of mischievous detours, very much in the spirit of Bob himself. Now, if you'd like to hear the Plus show, simplest thing to do is visit the links below and come and join the Patreon. You can either join as a subscriber or just buy an individual Plus show, whatever floats your boat. If you don't want to do any of that, but you'd like to support the show, you can always pick up a copy of my book, Son of the Dark Man, Father of the Witches, Lord of the Crossroads, available from all good bookstores. Okay, let's get on with the show. Okay, Gabriel, it's very nice to welcome you back to the Spirit Box. How you been? Have you been good?
Hey, Adara. Yeah, great to be here. You've been very well. Thanks for asking.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So the last time you were on, we spoke about your book, on Robert Anton Wilson, Chapel Perilous, and we went kind of into, I guess, a timeline of his life and kind of some of the complexities you laid out in the book. Was really interesting. But we had spoken about going through some other stuff, but we didn't kind of quite manage to get into the first show. So it's great to have you back to go into some of that stuff. And we've got stuff around like the puka. For those who are familiar with Irish folklore, will know what the puka is, and a whole raft of kind of other interesting topics that people may not be very familiar with around Raw's life and his interests. So if where do you want to start?
Well, I guess maybe it is fitting, yeah, to speak about the puka a little bit.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, kind of out of respect to the Dark Man, if you will. um, yeah. So we could get into that if you like.
Yeah,
Speaking about
let's do that. Let's do that then.
Yeah, so yeah, Robert Anton Wilson, as you and many of your listeners know, was one of those sort of what we would today call in many ways like a psychonaut, an early pioneer in self-initiation, I guess, in the wisdom traditions from the Western esoteric tradition to Buddhism to yoga, yeah, Eastern religions and etc. and he walked a pretty varied path as a writer and a self experimenter, if you will. And along that path, he encountered the puka. In November 1975, after 5 years of sort of working within the thelemic magical realm, that's the magic of Aleister Crowley, and Robert Anton Wilson had encountered what he believed Crowley said was the point of his whole magical program, and that was knowledge and conversation with his holy guardian angel, of which Wilson believed that he had contacted and conversated with, if you will, on around July 23rd, 1973. Between 1973 and November 1975, Bob was exploring, what this presence was, some sort of higher intelligence, communicated in synchronicities, in code with the number 23. It involved, the Sirius star constellation.
Right.
Wilson was working through a lot of different signs and symbols, and when he starts zeroing in on, trying to play with or see what the identity was of the holy guardian angel, if you will, he came upon the idea of dropping some acid at a new reformed order of the Golden Dawn ceremony in Berkeley. So it was kind of like a pagan
Right.
uh, organization. And the ceremonies were things like people sort of moving, holding hands, moving as a giant infinity sign across the floor, symbolizing the movement between life and death. One side of the infinity sign is life, the other is death, and it's one continuous flow. And Bob liked to do heavy doses of acid during those ceremonies, right? Sort of a proto ayahuasca,
Right. Okay.
ceremony for Bob, and and he did this in November 1975, and he set an intention for this trip, and that was to basically experience his holy guardian angel as a member of the fairy folk
Okay.
in the Celtic folklore. And just weeks before this, a psychic had told him that he was a reincarnation of an old Irish sort of shaman kind of character, storyteller,
Right.
Shanshi,
Shanaki.
uh,
Yeah.
and and another psychic had told him that he was like a reincarnation of a Taoist monk or something like that. So he was playing with all these things. He was having fun. It was the 70s, it was 1975, right? And and so he has this trip at that November pagan festival thing or whatever, and he experiences the other world, right, within the sort of Celtic context, and he excuse me. So he experiences that sort of the other world in the Celtic context, and intense trip. He comes back. He kind of settles his toes a little bit.
Right.
One night during the week after the ceremony, he's channel surfing on the TV, and he comes across a black and white movie he'd never seen before, starring Jimmy Stewart. And it just so happens that Jimmy Stewart is talking about a 6 foot tall white rabbit from the County Kerry named the Puka, and how he made friends with the Puka. And Bob is kind of vaguely watching it and gaining interest. And then all of a sudden, there's a character from the movie named Wilson, last name Wilson, who is sort of doubting that Jimmy
Okay.
Stewart's character is talking to this 6 foot tall white rabbit. And he zeroes in that, like, oh, this is a puka. Let me look up what a puka is. And this Wilson character goes to a dictionary or encyclopedia and is flipping through the definition, and comes across the the entry, and it reads, a Celtic elf or vegetative spirit of mischievous nature, and how are you tonight, Mr. Wilson? And so of course, Bob watched this and was extremely struck by this synchronicity.
Mm.
Um, he was in a highly psychedelic state of being during for a few years, actually probably roughly about 10 years, doing a lot of acid. And so this, was a message from his holy guardian angel then, because it communicated in synchronicities. And
Yeah.
of course, the character, it's self-explanatory. So from then on, he decided that his holy guardian angel was, as the name of the puka in the movie was named Harvey, right? So he would just call his holy guardian angel Harvey from then on, and the reason why he said that was so as not to take the who, the identity itself, the particular, you know, identity too seriously, because for him he could not take seriously the image of a 6 foot tall white rabbit,
Yeah.
from Ireland hopping around him and giving him messages, and but for the purposes of my book, and it's not just a literary thing that I constructed, it's observing in his life, is, as the puka is a mischievous spirit and can
Yeah.
bring good and bad fortune. And so Wilson had this experience in November 1975. This is when the third book of the Illuminatus trilogy is published for the first time. Dell published it in 3 installments, 3 books, September, October, November of 1975. Bob had been waiting for this moment, those 3 months, for years, right? Since he finished the book in 1971. He descended down an economic, quicksand into near poverty, right, over those years. And this was the thing, his life, jacket that was going to bring him
Yeah.
out. And so the good fortune was there. November 75 was a great month, but less than a year later, his 15-year-old daughter was murdered, and then shortly thereafter, his
Mm.
son went on was hit with full schizoaffective disorder, went
Yeah.
schizophrenic, and within the I think it's, you could correct me with this, I think it's just the Irish folklore, but maybe it's also England and Wales too, that term away with the fairies, you
Well,
know
yeah, I mean, it's certainly prevalent in Ireland. I've never heard it over here, to be honest, but it might
that's
be
interesting.
equivalent in Wales. But
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Like, but that's what happened with his son
yeah,
Graham.
right,
He got hit with schizophrenia, and then, as they'd say, he was away with the fairies. And so that was yeah. So within that context, you can say, like, he did meet the puka. Like,
mm,
there was good fortune and extremely
yeah,
bad
yeah,
fortune,
yeah.
and then it also fit within sort of a larger magical context
Mm,
too.
yeah, that's really interesting. I wasn't aware of that film. You just made me think of actually Donnie Darko as well. Like, I never put those things together, but like Donnie Darko is a very similar character. And the movie is about that kind of like descent into, alternative realities and experiencing pretty full on visions and circumstances. It's yeah. The more I think about it, put those together. Like, um, just for the sake of listeners, the the puka, it can appear like white, it can appear black, it can appear both colors. It sometimes can appear like like a horse, kind of a shaggy horse type thing. It's very difficult to pin down, but we have the variants of the term puka as like a puck. We had the puck fairy, or bucka in Cornwall. You've got very similar things. So it seems to be a very prevalent entity or energy that is certainly in this part of the world.
Yeah, it's I like how you phrase that, kind of tying it into a location on
Mm,
the earth. Yeah, Wilson put that somewhere, or maybe he picked that up from, yeah, a little bit, sort of where he went with it, right, was influenced, I'd say, by Jacques Vallée and John Keel.
Yeah.
John Keel, the UFO investigator, author of the book The Mothman Prophecies, and other books, but
Mm.
that's what was made famous. And that movie, The Mothman Prophecies, that came out in the '90s, terrifying movie.
That was
Uh,
brilliant, wasn't it? It was actually
yeah,
really, really good. I know for listeners, do you remember the phone scene in that? Like,
uh, that's the one scene that always stands out.
yeah,
That's the freakiest
it
scene.
properly is just like make your blood run cold.
Yeah,
So, um,
that's when the movie took a whole other turn for me. I
yeah,
was like, oh man, this is good.
no, it was really interesting. And there was a whole
Freaky
kind of
shit.
there was a whole blast of kind of Mothman stuff as well. About kind of 5 years ago, there was a real resurgence in interest. Um, I think it was what's his name? I can't remember the guy's name, but he wrote a book um about kind of the ultraterrestrials. Oh, what is it? It's gone from me. But the he talks about Indrid Cold in it, that character.
Hmm. The one
But
on the end of the phone.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
all very weird stuff. Yeah, I love it. We're getting some good movies here. We're thinking about it here. This chat.
Oh, heck
Yeah.
yeah. I've come across a skeptic's view. I don't know if I don't think I've made this up. I think I've read or saw this somewhere that someone was like, that was someone that John Keel knew and was
Really.
messing with them or something. but don't quote me on that. Such a great story, Mothman Prophecies. And
Mm,
yeah, Wilson saw a lot in that notion of ultra terrestrial, this idea
mm,
of these beings as we see them, that are entities unto themselves, but they're really just the sort of manifestation that exists in a borderland between
mm,
matter and energy, and thinking about what you just said, the puka, the puck, is kind of manifesting from that part of the globe, like these energies that manifest in specific zones that take on different characteristics, but might be reflective of, I mean, I guess this is the path of like a Joseph Campbell sort of finding the similarities in all of these beings,
mm.
I remember listening to a conversation you'd had speaking about the puka, and you were also studying the jinns, so finding similarities
Mm.
within that, and that's Bob was definitely of that mindset, finding these, as you call them, isomorphisms,
Okay.
these similar structures in all these different sort of experiences. Because before he encountered, quote unquote, the puka, like you could say he never saw the puka per se. He
Right.
saw it through the media, which makes him sort of very 1970s,
Mm, mm.
Burroughs and Genesis
Yeah.
Peerage and Toppy and Chaos Magic S. You use the technology to manifest these things, but he actually saw what he called was mescalito in the '60s.
Okay.
So and that was a little green man dancing in his garden in Yellow Springs, Ohio, after he had like a giant psychedelic trip the night before, and he was rooting through his plants, and he just saw a little guy doing a little silent, like a jig,
Yeah.
right? And
Interesting.
I envision the Great Gazoo from the Flintstones, that little guy, some sort of cartoonesque
Yeah.
experience. And so, but he had read Carlos Castaneda, and Castaneda had spoken about Mescalito, this little being manifestation that is attached to a mescaline trip too. So now you tie in the psychedelic aspect
Hmm.
to this as well, and that is another isomorphism. These sort of alien experiences with these ultra terrestrial sort of experiences, if you will.
Yeah.
And then Bob was thinking about all of that stuff. And, when he first had that, July 23rd, 1973 experience, that was for him the beginning of the conversation with his holy guardian angel. We chart it there for roughly about a year and change. He's thinking that, oh, I'm getting messages from the Sirius star constellation
Right.
telepathically from maybe physical beings out there, right? But then he meets Jacques Vallée, comes to his this Crowley Mass party. So it's a birthday party for Crowley in
Hmm.
October 1974 at Bob's Berkeley apartment. And Jacques Vallée rolls through, and they, as they say back in the day, they rapped, right? And Vallée laid it down, and he let him know his theory on what these beings might be, and
Right.
that's where he goes through uh, this notion that sounds like ultra terrestrial as well. But I like this quote that Bob used from Vallée in his book. Talking about this, and it's Vallée said to him, they, whoever they are, right, relate to space time in ways for which we have at present no concepts. They cannot explain to us, uh, because we're just not ready to
Hmm.
understand, what the heck they're trying to say.
Hmm.
And Bob, during that time, that era of the mid early to mid 70s, when he had some of these deep psychedelic experiences, for example, when he had that going to the other world during that pagan ceremony ritual, uh, the fairies were telling him stuff, right? And that's all that he could remember from this huge, amazing trip full of so many visions, right? He came back with like there was hardly anything, like waking from a dream, right? And all he could remember were these fairies trying to tell him this incomprehensible stuff about the nature of time.
Hmm.
And you see this throughout his book, Cosmic Trigger Volume 1. He's constantly confronting this with these, when he's getting these messages from these different voices, they're always trying to tell him something about time.
Right.
So I'll just put a pin in that. That seems to be something about this greater psychedelic conversation, because you see Terence McKenna gets obsessed with the notion of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so there's, and then Grant Morrison goes into this realm of time when he's speaking about his sort of thelemic slash
Hmm.
psychedelic experiences. Um, so Wilson, goes through that, and those are the messages that he receives. But through this conversation with Jacques Vallée in October 1974, he starts, thinking differently about the physical location from which these messages are emanating from, and then he's already kind of reading John Keel, but he really takes to this notion then that like, whoa, these could just also be here already, because where Keel goes, and I think Vallée as well says, is that these sort of ultra terrestrials, and that's Keel's word, are here already. They could
Hmm.
exist already on this planet right here in front of us on a different dimension, right? And I know David Icke has said that too, which then you get into some real far out like what
Hmm.
territory. But keeping it within the realm of John Keel, it is very interesting to think about. Bob would often speak about this movie, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, starring Peter Weller.
Yeah, I know the movie. Yeah.
Um, and that was they go into a mountain and they encounter these ultra terrestrials, because they create like a device to actually go through this portal
Hmm.
interdimensionally while still on this Earth and whatnot. And yeah, Bob thought that sort of summed up some of what he was thinking in terms of that. But what John Keel said as well about these ultra terrestrials is that, much like the Mothman or Indrid Coal, they're mischievous, they're deceptive, they're
Hmm.
dangerous, they're likely to produce mental illness in those who communicate with them. So, I could zero in on Bob specifically there, but then also pull back on this wider kind of literary cultural phenomenon of when these tropes come up as well, like, the Necronomicon, the H.P. Lovecraft
Hmm.
sort of invention of the mad Arab, Abdul Hazar, you know, who that's the story of the Necronomicon, that he read this book and it drove him mad. He went crazy, this idea that one needs to have something together in their psyche before really putting the call out to these
Yeah.
what Bob called higher intelligences, but
Hmm.
who, the ultra terrestrials don't sound so much like higher intelligences, really, just different sort of intelligences or whatever. But I'm sure they do bring within the context of all that, gifts of second sight
Hmm.
or whatnot, and so um, yeah, Bob's that meeting with Valet in October 74, that kind of allows Bob to start playing with this notion more of the who again, of what the whole, who's this holy guardian angel exactly that I'm communicating with. And then I think he found that similar things to what other searchers with LSD or psychedelics has found, that when you apply, you can craft the trip. You have as much say in the manifestation as just, it returns to his sort of the thing that he returns to a lot in different sciences, which is we're actively engaged in co-creating the moment all the time.
Right.
We're physically present. We're always in it in the way that our perception works. And so everything is a reminder to him that he's sort of co-creating this thing. And that's where the puka comes from. And
Mm.
um, but it's rooted in his journey though, like and then his journey that he lays down in Cosmic Trigger Volume 1, I think becomes like a very pivotal text for the chaos magicians that come, a decade later in the
Yeah, yeah,
80s
you
and
can
stuff
really see
like
that.
that.
Yeah, that there's a like it seems to be kind of a golden thread in the thinking. Particularly with that idea that you're co-creating the experience. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, that's really interesting. Um, I'm 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 fascinated by kind of what you pulled out there and the idea of like these kind of, I guess, kind of great psychedelic thinkers always ending up in this area of being um, drawn into these explorations of time in an extraordinary way. You know,
Mhm.
that's a really good point. Yeah, of course, Terence McKenna and his Time Wave Zero um, stuff. I was chatting with this to that point with Joshua Cutchin a couple of months back, and he made an interesting point about the whole thing about like 2012 is going to be the end of the world, the Mayan calendar, and the back
Yeah.
times and all that kind of stuff. That what if it wasn't a big bang and actually is 2012 was actually just the start of the time wave zero glacier starting to melt, you know,
Oof.
uh, which kind of explains a lot
Yeah. Yeah.
about our current timeline. You mentioned in our exchanges about one of Wilson's essays, the Celtic roots of quantum theory. Could you speak to that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's sort of so yeah, Wilson's essay that he published in one of his later books, and it was probably out as like an article in the magazines that he wrote for. But it was called the Celtic Roots of Quantum Theory, and basically, it's he spent 6 years living in Ireland from 1982 to 1988. He lived in Dublin, and this was after sort of like a growing, long time interest with uh, sort of physics, and going deeper in quantum physics. Before he moved to Ireland, he got tight with this group of particle physicists called the Physics Consciousness Research Group. People like Saul Paul Sarag and Fred Allen Wolf, Nick Herbert, Jack Sarfati. So he was really thinking a lot about quantum physics, right? He wrote Schrödinger's cat trilogy, which dealt a lot with that, and was getting accolades from physicists, for blurbs of his book, like
Mm.
John Gribben, who was a popularizer of a lot of physics stuff, like highly praised Schrödinger's cat trilogy. Said something like, "What great physicist lies in the mind of Robert Anton Wilson?" Like it's a nice bit of praise. So Bob, wasn't just blowing smoke. Wasn't just hopping a ride on the new age train of talking about quantum physics, the Tao of everything. Um, he took it seriously, and so he ever since high school, actually, one of his favorite mathematicians, because he had one time he thought about uh, in college studying was it like abstract math, right? Like and like getting a degree in it. But it was an Irish mathematician named William Rowan Hamilton who he basically created imaginary numbers, right? Or he created this thing, I should rather say, called non-cumulative math, right? In the mid 19th century, and for decades it was considered useless.
Right.
And he was out there, I think, in Dublin, just writing away with this stuff. And but it wasn't until roughly 70 years later when Erwin Schrödinger uh, uses the Hamilton's math in his Schrödinger equation, the equation that wins him the Nobel Prize,
Right.
right, in physics, and that really blasts off like quantum mechanics, the Schrödinger equation, because this sort of, speaking not as a physicist, but so if I get some things a little off, don't come at me, audience. But
I was just thinking you're doing pretty well here. I would never remember any of this.
cheers, man. Um, yeah, the wave function, right? I think it's that Schrödinger definitely is the one that coins that whole notion of the wave function. This being what how the photons or particles are sort of moving through space and time.
Right.
We study the wave function. And so, Schrödinger would not have come up with that if it weren't for Hamilton's math. And so, Bob always got a kick out of that, because it's like, here you go, this thing that was created, it was considered totally useless for 70 some odd years. And
Yeah.
then it's math that describes the subatomic world very, very well. And it doesn't work for the ordinary world at all.
Right.
And so, Wilson thought this was like, well, this is a very Irish sort of thing now, isn't it? Like, and he loved it. He really did. And and basically what he saw was like, Hamilton was an example of this aspect of the Irish mind that in this essay, he speaks about borrowing, I think, from Anthony Burgess, the British writer, the author of Clockwork Orange, different types of English that are spoken, right?
Right.
There's English, American English, and Irish English. And
Mhm.
English and American English are very sort of project oriented, like, get
Mhm.
to A to B, finish,
Mhm.
get there. And Irish English is ludic, it's very playful, right?
Mhm.
And this is how Burgess interpreted all of this. And it's a sort of scenic route of sort of, and what would be described sort of more as more exploratory, right? And within this exploratory expression, right, leaves a lot of room for a lot of use of words. And it made sense for Bob that the Irish had the largest vocabulary in Europe
Yeah.
at the time that he was writing this essay, and still might. And he saw it in everything, sort of like this was, he was living in Ireland before the European Union brought in all the roads, right? So there was just roads that led in circles sometimes, or
Yeah.
roads that seemed to lead. And I don't know if he made the connection to the potato famine and the works projects and
Yeah.
how they just had people building useless fucking roads,
Mhm.
like, but it was all part of this charm of this just like the Celtic knot, right? In
Mhm.
terms of our art, like this sort of amazing movement through space and time that utilizes the space around you like very nicely. And he just loved the way Irish people spoke.
Yeah.
He thought it was great, and it made sense to him too, because what he saw, J.M. Singh loved the way Irish people spoke. Yeah, and when I say love the way Irish people spoke, he also went sort of very philosophical with it too. He believed that this all sort of reflected a cultural approach to time again in a different way. And he said that he might have been quoting Joyce, or it might have been him saying it, but that these great sort of Irish, Anglo-Irish philosophers throughout the modern era, from Berkeley. He said Celtic philosophers, so he included Henri Bergson in that, and maybe a couple other people. But looking at Berkeley, for instance, this notion of they all spoke about time, and kind of like how time doesn't make any sense in
Right.
some ways, right? And Bob said in a movie after living in Ireland, this movie called LX94, I believe, something like that. Um, that he likes saying this, that time was a British invention. Trying to make Irish people work. Uh, I wish I had the quote right off the top of my head, but basically, time was a British invention that was trying to impose work on people that they had no
Yeah,
business
yeah,
imposing work upon.
yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And like the Irish dialect of English, Hiberno Irish, it's very very different to I guess what commonly spoken English here. Um, and there's loads of nuances in it. Like, I mean, I still get pulled up on it over here. People are like, "What are you talking about?" With the sentence structure, for example, it borrows an awful lot from Irish. So, like expressions like "I am hungry," like that doesn't exist in Irish. It's like "I have hunger upon me." To okra it's upon me.
Mm-hmm.
So from that kind of thinking, it's like I'm not that thing. I'm experiencing that thing, right? It's almost like it's a separation from the individual. It is upon me. There's lots of kind of really kind of weird little nuances in that language that are totally different or don't even have direct translations in English. I've been spending close to 3 years now relearning it. You know, um, and I start to see it now more with kind of a with an adult brain rather than a child's brain. Like you start to see the nuances in a lot more, and
Mm-hmm.
I can see the point. I can see the idea of it being kind of more or giving space for such kind of strange concepts.
Mm-hmm.
Like I get that. There's a guy you might like as well. John Moriarty is an Irish philosopher, um, and he probably would have had some crossover time wise with Robert Anton Wilson. I'm not sure
Mm-hmm.
he was published um, when Wilson was still in Ireland, but he has some very very far out ideas. I mean, he does
Mm-hmm.
some. He wrote a book called "Invoking Ireland," and he's talking about when we talk about kind of like quantum ideas. Um, he's doing it through this kind of mythopoetic way, where he's like layering the different Irelands on top of them of each other. So like you have the material Ireland, of Eru, but then you have like Bamba and kind of like Tirnanog and all these like he kind of like I mean, I would like to say it's a map, but it's not. It's actually some of it is like I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. That's some deep
Right,
shit.
right,
You know what I mean?
right.
Like
Yeah.
like it's very kind of like what the hell did I just read there? I need to go back through that again. Like he's just juxtaposed kind of like Hellenic mythology with Irish mythology, and kind of like and kind of layered in these ideas of kind of time and kind of place and other place being interlinked. Like
Mm.
so I think it is embedded in the place. If you think about that whole idea of there is another world parallel that you can't see, there are these other beings that are here that walk among us that have affect us, but you cannot see, or you can sometimes you can, like that's embedded in the folk belief. Like
Mhm.
it's a it doesn't surprise me, but it's pleasant to kind of pull that thread into kind of like you know um, relatively modern quantum physics and that type of thinking. Yeah, that's really interesting that Robert Anton Wilson's kind of spotted that.
Yeah, it's a nice little essay. It really is.
Mm,
It's in a book of his called Email to the Universe, and you can probably find it online too.
right.
Just the essay in and of itself, because he did believe this. He believed that if the sort of, I mean, besides Schrödinger, who ended up living in Ireland as well, after he wrote the Schrödinger equation. But if some of the other physicists like Dirac or David Bohm or some of these other guys who sort of frame the whole context through a sort of Taoist, Buddhist, Vedantic sort of
Mm-hmm.
phraseology, because that was part of the zeitgeist of the 60s and 70s, was this idea of the Eastern and Western mind meeting, and
Mm-hmm.
all these sort of quote unquote Western scientists, right, quote unquote, utilizing the languages from this stuff. Even Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert, Ram Dass, and Richard Metzger, they translated the Tibetan Book of the Dead into the psychedelic Book of the Dead and whatnot. But what Bob said was, if these physicists had read Finnegans Wake, they would have found like
Yeah.
even more descriptive
Mm-hmm.
language, if you want to call those words
Yeah.
language, like Joycean language, descriptive terms for these sort of states of being, like you said as well. And then the hunger is upon me. Like Bob saw that, after living there too, like Joyce wasn't just pulling this sort of orientation out of his own singular self. Like he was raised within this context of this, for him, the Anglo-ish, well, this Irish world where this different notion of linguistic relationship with reality exists, where yeah, it's not as essentialist, like the hunger's coming from within.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, I'm moving through a state, that
Mm-hmm.
this is a hungry state, kind of acknowledging that the body moves in a flux and a flow more than these kind of singular solid states. So Bob loved that. He also got into, and at the time this guy was kind of, I guess, well-known-ish, kind of, this guy named Bob Quinn, who wrote the book The Atlantean Irish, and then put out
Oh yeah,
sort
yeah.
of film series, and ran in Ireland more than anywhere, maybe. The Atlantean Irish documentary series, which studied the language structure of old Gaelic, the Sean Noss singing of the
Mm-hmm.
Western Ireland and the Connacht region, the Connacht, no,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no,
Got
the
it, got it.
Galtech zone, where everyone spoke mostly Gaelic.
Around goal, yeah, the Gaeltacht. Yeah,
Y-
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In Galway, I was only there a couple of weeks ago. It's very nice,
Oh,
you
nice.
know. Got to listen to some proper Irish, you know.
Mhm.
It's
In
actually
Galway.
as a total. Yeah, I was out in the Aran Islands as well, like, but
Oh.
as a total aside, one thing that always makes me laugh is you'll hear this like, I mean, really like thick accented like native Irish from the Islanders, right? And
Mhm.
boy, I was kind of because they kind of run these kind of pony and trap and these bus services to bring you up to the main sites and back, because there's ferries on and off all the time.
Yeah.
And but when you listen to them, like I mean, like I'm at the point now where I can kind of pick up like some words, but then I have to kind of calculate and put it together, like so it's like I'm by far from kind of like I hear what they're saying, I do my whole hear what they're saying, like, but I can hear funny thing is that like they swear like a trooper, so but they'll be speaking in Irish and they'll pepper it, you'll just hear fuck, oh fuck, fuck. It's Irish, fuck, Irish, which always makes me laugh, like.
Oh,
So there's
heck
definitely
yeah.
some English that's got back in there. It's mainly the sweary stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I wonder, is that the most common curse word of the Irish? Just fuck.
Oh yeah,
This
we love it.
fucking thing.
Yeah,
Fucking.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Great word. It's a beautiful word.
in a lot of ways, like I mean, like in social circles, it's like it's not really considered like a swear word, that much. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
I mean, I don't want to paint a picture. Everyone's dropping the f bomb. It's not like it's not that much, but like, we do like it. We do like a good swear now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I tell you that I remember as a kid in Ireland there, with eating dinner with my aunts and cousins and stuff, and they were my age, 12.
Yeah.
Fucking the fucking thing and the fucking this. And the parents said nothing. And I was like, this is great. You know, you know, I was like, I
Yeah.
like this. Yeah, it was a little different in the States, even with the Irish, but don't curse, but it's
Mhm.
like those, again, like you said, it's more, it's a great word.
Yeah.
So, um, and Yeah, Bob really, again, he really took to he really kind of like studied Irish culture when he was out there and really sought to tie it into his work. And he again really believed that if these physicists had read Finnegans Wake, they would have
Mm.
found metaphors that kind of matched it, what they were explaining well. Not going to say better than the sort of Taoist metaphors and whatnot. But one example of a physicist grabbing something good from Finnegans Wake and applying it to quantum mechanics was Murray Gell-Mann, who in 1963 came up with the word quirk or quark
Right.
to describe a particle that's smaller than a photon. So that was a breakthrough. This idea for a long time, scientists were like, well, photons are the smallest unit, but along comes something they magnified more, and Gell-Mann names it a quark from a quote from Finnegans Wake, which said, "Was it 3 quark for Muster Mark?" You know, um, and so it kind of proved Bob's point, I
Right.
suppose.
Yeah. It's been a fantastic having you back, Gabriel. Thank you for speaking so knowledgeably and taking us on this journey into your research on Raw. Um, where can people pick up your book if they're looking for getting a copy of it?
For sure, yeah. They could go to my website, chapelperilous.us. You can find links to the book from Lulu Press and Amazon. You could just go directly onto Amazon. The book is titled Chapel Perilous: The Life and Thought Crimes of Robert Anton Wilson. Just Google that. Also, you could go to your local bookstore and place an order.
Yeah.
Uh, should be available for that as well. And yeah, but yeah, check out my Substack, Gabriel Patrick Kennedy at Substack, putting up a sort of lot of raw related articles, things I was
Yeah.
not able to get into in the book, and just to dig a little deeper, into this whole
You've the most
phenomenon.
Irish name. My name is more Irish than mine.
Shit. Do you want to hear something crazy too? I was born on St. Patrick's Day.
Brilliant,
Like,
brilliant.
and my dad was a bar owner, man, and I was like the mascot on St. Patrick's Day.
Fantastic. And what do you got coming up next?
I'm working on a few things. Uh, one of which I'm doing some recording right now, so I'm hoping to get out the audio book version of the
Oh,
book
brilliant.
coming months.
Yeah.
And yeah, just trying to put together a couple more raw related
Hmm.
material, and um, hoping to put a little tour together as well.
Oh, good stuff.
That's all up in the air.
Yeah.
So, I'm definitely willing to head out to Europe as well. Like
Hmm.
be nice to take a trip. You
Yeah, yeah,
know.
absolutely. Well, I mean, it's a fabulously thorough and well researched and well written, piece that you've put together. Like, and the depth of research and investigation and inquiry is just fervently evident when you're reading. So, I know we spoke about that last time, but I really rate it. I think it's a fantastic book. So, I look forward to seeing what you do next. It's been an absolute pleasure having you back on the Spirit Box, Gabriel. And hopefully we can get you back on again soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Dara. Thank you for all the kind words. Thanks for having me on again. And yeah, this was a blast, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Gabriel. I hope you all enjoyed that as much as I did. I thought it was a fascinating interview. Gabriel really knows his subject matter so well. It was a great conversation and very illuminating. Pardon the pun. Do check the show notes. There's loads of really great stuff there for further inquiry, further investigation into the work of Raw and some of the subject matter we discussed today. And I'm going to leave it there. Take care and talk soon. I'm Darren Mason. You've been listening to the Spirit Box. Bye.